Hello students, and welcome to the CompTIA Tech Plus exam course brought to you by Third Level Technology. I am your instructor, Jim Herbie. In this episode, we're going to begin Module 3 in the exam objectives, which covers applications and software. In this episode, we'll discuss Section 3.1, Operating System Components. Let's begin. Our first operating system component is compression. Compression is a characteristic within our file systems that allows us to reduce the size of a file when we save it. This allows us to conserve our storage space and to speed up our transfers when we are sending files across the network. There are two types of file compression, lossless and loss-e. Lossless means all of our data remains intact. The most common example of lossless is a zip file. Loss-e means some data can be lost during the file compression. This commonly occurs with image files such as JPEG or PNG. A compressed file must be decompressed at the destination in order to return the file and its contents to its original state. Another common characteristic of our file systems is encryption. Encryption is a process of taking data in its plain text or readable form and converting it into an encoded version called ciphertext. Encryption can protect data that is in our storage devices, data at rest, or data that is being sent across the network, data in transit. Encryption will use an algorithm. Algorithms are very complex rules that will convert all of our data within our original file into an encoded version of a set character length depending on the algorithm that we use. Some common algorithms are AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, RSA, and SHA, the Secure Hashing Algorithm. Next, we're going to discuss some common file types. Some common file types include document files. These are used for text and formatted files. Image files are those that are used for graphics and pictures. These include your JPEG, your GIF, and your PNG. Audio and video are file types that are used for some type of multimedia content. Audio files come in MP3, video in MP4 and WAV files. We also need to familiarize ourselves with the common file extensions. A file extension is a suffix that you see at the end of a file name that identifies what type of application will open the file when it is executed. Some common file extensions include JPEG, JPG, which are image files. TXT is short for text, which indicates a document file. EXE is an executable file, which allows us to launch and run some type of file. And a zip file, ZIP, is a file extension we use for compressed files. If we change a file extension without the proper file conversion, it will make all of the contents within the file unreadable and unusable. Next, we're going to discuss file management. These are the different ways we can organize our files in a structured format. Our operating systems will use folders and directories as the common backbone to organize our files. Folders will be individual locations where multiple files can be stored with a common purpose or context. A directory is a collection of individual folders. Your root directory is the location within your file system where we will keep all of the boot, BIOS, and critical system files for our operating system. And we can create different paths to access specific file locations within the root directory. Within our folders and directories, we can set file permissions. File permissions control who can read, write, or execute an individual file, folder, or directory. Some common permission types include read, the ability to only view a file, write, the ability to modify a file, and execute, the ability to run a file. File permissions can also take different levels that we see on our network, such as administrator or standard user. And our IT staff can configure which types of individuals can access based on their permission levels. We can configure file permissions for individual users or groups of users. Another aspect of our file management is naming restrictions. Naming restrictions is preventing certain types of characters to appear within a file name. Exclude exclamation points, question marks, back and forward slashes, and colons. You can also set the length of character limits. Your default for a file name is 255 characters, but we can configure this to be a shorter length if we want. Depending on the type of operating system, we may have case sensitivity. Linux is case sensitive. We have to be very precise if we have any capital letters in the file name. Next, we're going to discuss system applications. System applications are built-in tools within the operating system that support specific functions. Some examples in Windows include Task Manager, Control Panel, and Active Directory. System applications allow us to perform monitoring of all of our file transfers and to configure our backup tools if we have any disruption in accessing a specific storage device. Your system applications are typically pre-installed and are updated as part of the normal operating system patching process. Services are background programs that perform essential functions within the operating system. Services will include our boot configurations and how our users can interact with the BIOS. Other services that we configure include the print spooler and all of our networking services. Within our operating system services configurations, we also can control how we update all the different managers within the OS, such as password managers and browser certificates. Processes are running programs in the background of our operating system. They will use their own memory and resources of CPU and storage, the user to start, stop, and view individual processes. Each process will have a unique process ID, abbreviated as PID. And within your operating system, you can access all the running processes and see which ones are having any type of difficulty or that have become inoperational. Drivers are software that allow the OS to communicate with connected hardware. An example of a driver are printers. Printer drivers allow the operating system on our computer to communicate with connected network printers for final output. Drivers are specific to a hardware manufacturer. Without a driver that matches the hardware, we will have compatibility issues. And we're going to conclude by discussing several different interfaces we have within our operating systems. Our first interface is the command line. We'll refer to this as the console. Your command line, or CLI, short for command line interface, is how we can use text-typed commands to interact with the operating system. We can use specific commands like ping, copy, all the different commands that we have discussed in other sections. We can use these to interact with the OS through a text-based format. We also can schedule automated updates and patching within the command line as well. A second interface type is a graphical user interface, or GUI, G-U-I. A GUI is a visual display interface. We use icons, images, drop-down menus, windows, pointers. All of these are visual ways that we can interact with the software. An example of a GUI is your Windows desktop. You can access different applications, icons, menus, your startup menu. These are all ways you can interact with the Windows desktop GUI. And a third interface type is file attribute. A file attribute is configuring our interface for the ways that the end user can interact. We can make an interface read-only, hidden, or system. System will have abbreviation of the letter S, and this is a file attribute that can be modified by identified users. Hidden, or the letter H, will keep certain files within the interface unviewable, and read-only allows an end user to visualize the information, but they can't do any types of modifications. That will conclude our discussion of Section 3.1, Operating System Components. In our next episode, we will move on to Section 3.2 in the objectives and discuss operating system use cases. We thank you again for following along in the episodes and the course, and wish you best of luck in your studies. Enjoy the rest of your day.